that good.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 4, Episode 121 of the Premier Pod. I'm your host, Yash Bika, joined by my co-host, Tyler Chan. And if you're watching the video version of the podcast, I finally have a new kit. Yes, finally, after 500 years, 4 seasons of rocking the same old kits, I finally picked up Splash the Cash on the United away jersey this season. I just thought it looked really cool. I really liked the little blue stripes and everything to it. And I was like, you know what? Finally time to upgrade the kit, because the last United kit I bought was the 2016-17 home one. So, 4 seasons. I feel like this is the year where things going to change and become the better United, the old United. So I'm like, I got to splash the cash on this one. But other than that, we just wrapped up the opening weekend of the Premier League. It was really fun. One interesting note out of the opening weekend was that there was not a single draw, not a single tie, as Ted Lasso would say, in the Premier League. So literally during week one, every team either won or lost. So not a single draw. So it was filled with a lot of goals, a lot of action, a lot of storylines that came out of it. But not only that, but stadiums were back at full capacity, which was another big deal, because for the longest time, I know we saw fans come back for the final, I believe, 3 weeks of the season, but it was only home fans that were allowed back in the stadium, not full capacity. But this was the first week we saw a full packed house stadium for probably the first time since February of 2020. Honestly, it's been that long. But Tyler, initial reactions from the opening weekend of the Premier League.
It was just surreal seeing all like just the fan noise. It wasn't like that EA Sports funneled in off the speakers kind of noise. It was just like,
No
this is what it was
noise.
in the past. Yeah, there was no artificial noise. It was literally just raw, raucous fans, and that really played a part into how some of the teams played this weekend.
The home team definitely got that boost.
Mm-hmm, definitely, and we're gonna go into those in our analysis in a sec. But like, it was just good to see. It was just very good vibes. Just seeing everything kind of getting a little bit back to more normal as we saw pre-COVID.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. Was we're gonna talk about this going a little bit, but the Mason Greenwood goal for United in the Leeds matchup, after he scored, it was in the Stretford end, and you could literally see him running, and just the crowd. Like, there was this amazing photo of, you could just get like a big, huge like depth of field of like what was going on. Where as soon as he scored, you could see the emotion on his face, but also you could see all the emotions on all the United fans. They were just screaming for joy. Just couldn't believe what they saw. They were just hugging each other. Everyone was just on their feet going crazy. And we just kind of missed those moments, because obviously all of last season and, coming back for Project Restart, we were just so used to the empty stadiums and the players essentially just kind of hugging each other. And yeah, they would show that emotion, but something about the fans, they bring out that extra sense of, wow, when it comes to the performances and some of the emotions we saw. So I can't, I can't complain. It was definitely fun. It made for better photos. It made for better atmospheres. It made for better reactions to goals. The crowd was just on their feet. It was, everything was just so much better with the fans back. And I think, generally speaking, that's been the vibe that I got from pretty much everyone, no matter who you supported. The fans being back was just a plus for the Premier League for sure. But there were a couple big results that happened in this Premier League weekend, and then I have to start it off with my team, Manchester United. They kicked off the Premier League weekend. Arsenal and Brentford kicked off the actual Premier League season, but Leeds kicked off the weekend, and United ended up beating Leeds 5-1. But gosh, there was so much stuff that happened in this game. Before the game even started, Manchester United finally announced and unveiled their new star center back signing, Raphael Varane, in front of a packed Old Trafford. And wow, that was crazy. When I was working that game, I was like, okay, I have to cover this. But, after I got done with my shift, I just kind of sat back and was like, whoa, we really announced Varane in front of a packed stadium. And there was somebody that covered United on Twitter actually said that, the way we announced Varane beats any like piano announcement or any other hype announcement video you can think of. Like, announcing a star center back player that literally came out like he was $1 million. Like, he looked $1 million with the black suit and everything. Oh, Tyler, that was crazy. When I saw that was wild.
I was gonna say, he came out holding the jersey while wearing a full suit and tie. I was like, what's going on? It's like,
he took a selfie in the middle of the pitch too.
I was like, I've never seen a reveal like this. Also, live before a game. Usually it'd be its own event in, a closed stadium. I'm kind of thinking like Santi Cazorla when he was unveiled to Villarreal. Or like, Messi too. So, and then even like every you can always think of the iconic like Barcelona unveilings where it's just them juggling a ball here and there, and then
Yeah,
having the cameras take pictures of them, and then if they fail at the juggling, it's like, all right, that's a sign. But
yeah,
I mean, for Varane being unveiled opening weekend to all the United
packed
fans
Old Trafford
like
too.
a rock star, I was just like, what is going on? Like
Yeah,
this that kind of gave a telltale sign of just like what's to come. And I'm just like, I'm kind of scared.
yeah.
As a Liverpool fan, I was like, ooh, that looks insane. Oh
It
no.
it was wild too because I don't think the TV did like the best, I guess, job, or the broadcast did the best job of capturing the noise. But the people that were inside the stadium said that when he came out of the tunnel, they said that Old Trafford, just like the roof went off of Old Trafford. It just got so loud when they saw him walk out. But that was a big thing that happened. Jadon Sancho made his debut finally for Manchester United. Came on, I think, in the 75th or 80th minute in this game. So that was a big plus sign to see. But also, obviously, two of the biggest storylines for United were Bruno Fernandes scoring a hat trick, all three goals coming from open play, not a single set piece goal, and then Paul Pogba getting 4 assists in this game. Just immense. And not to mention, this wasn't just a game where I would say Bruno and Pogba, they just got a goal and assist and that's all they did. They legitimately controlled this entire game. They ran the show for United. And Paul Pogba just looked a million. I mean, he looked amazing getting those 4 assists. Like the passes he was doing were crisp. He was on the ball, intelligent. Like he was playing. There's always this dilemma of like France Paul Pogba and then Paul Pogba for Manchester United. But you know, we finally saw Paul Pogba the way he plays for France in a Manchester United kit, and he just looked amazing. Him and Bruno Fernandez, the link up those two will have, and the link up those two had last season was phenomenal. They just ran the show, and I was just blown away by how good they were against Leeds.
And I mean, you got to give some credit to Leeds. Like, it didn't seem like their defense just fell apart. It literally just unlocked by
Yeah,
Pogba's passes. Like, some of the passes I saw that game were insane. Some of these passes would be, passes of the season, but he did four.
yeah,
And some of them, granted, some of them were just, basic, just big chances created, just slicing through the defense. But some of these passes that he did to unlock the defense, like I even remember distinctly, like his second assist, where he just passed it down the wing
yeah.
to Greenwood.
Like
I was just like,
perfectly
he went,
weighted, placed where Greenwood could just take it on his stride. That was a good one.
he
That one
placed a
was
ground ball from like midfield, like right near like the halfway line to the goal box while on the ground. It was like an Ozil level pass, so it's just
hmm
on a dime. I was like, what is going on?
The
Like,
the
what?
other one that stuck out to me was the first one where he assisted the opening goal for United, where McTominay played a hard fast ball, ground pass to him, and then basically he saw Bruno making the run, didn't even take the touch, first time pass, lifts it over the defense of Leeds and places it right into Bruno Fernandes's, where he can take the delicate touch and then just score the goal. So he had multiple assists like that, and I thought was what was also interesting was last season, Paul Pogba only had 3 assists in the Premier League, and this game he literally had 4. So he literally shattered his last season's assist mark. So if this is a telltale sign of the performances we're going to get from Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba, I'm really really excited to see. I honestly think those two, they're the best midfield duo in the Premier League, just purely on talent, ability, end product. I think those two are the best midfield duo in the Premier League. But one thing I felt like that kind of got a little unnoticed was Mason Greenwood. I was really, really impressed by him. Not to mention the goal he scored was just phenomenal because that second goal where he literally runs past his defender, picks up the Paul Pogba through ball and finishes it perfectly into the bottom right corner of the net. It ran down like 58, like 40, 50 yards down the pitch to go all the way to the goal line to score. People were saying that it just was essentially Mason Greenwood like becoming a grown man. That was a grown man finish. Because Mason Greenwood is still 19, and it feels like he's a lot older than he is. But we've been watching him for a couple seasons now, and this game, it just felt like he bulked up. He looks a lot more stronger. He looks more capable of handling more consistent Premier League minutes. He just looks an all around just a better player and just more physically. it's like his body is caught up to kind of the technical ability he has. So I was very, very impressed with Mason Greenwood. I think you know, he can play his role even if it's on the right wing or even if it's as a backup striker to Edison Cavani. I think he can play a very, very important role for United's attack this season because he's so multidimensional, 2-footed, has good skill moves, has pace, can finish. He's just an outstanding player.
Mhm. And with Jadon Sancho coming in, it's not like he has to play on the wing as much as well this
Yeah.
season. So it'll be just him up top. If Edison Cavani needs to be put out for load management or maybe an injury, something like that.
Hmm.
So this is kind of his time because it didn't really look like they brought in anyone else to play that central striking. It's just like, all right, it's all you. It's all
Yeah.
you.
It's
So
you.
it was looking very scary. This overall, all these kind of parts coming together, like this integration of
Yeah.
all
This is
these.
this is without Rashford starting. Rashford wasn't even
Exactly.
on the
So
team.
it's like all the puzzle pieces aren't even there yet. It's just so it's a little scary seeing that dismantling of Leeds 5-1 as is. So I mean, it is opening weekend, so we have to
Yeah.
put that disclaimer in there. It's just like it's just one sample. We got to see how it is
Yeah,
throughout the whole
that's been
38
the
game
biggest thing
season.
is with Solskjaer last season is like they could do it for a couple games, but they just can they do it for the entire Premier League season? Can they do it consistently, from week 1 all the way to the last week of the season? That's I think going to be the biggest question mark and whether this team is actually ready to challenge for titles is can they do this consistently? I don't know. I'm interested to see, and I think one little point about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, then we'll move on from United, but the transformation he's made with this squad since he took over as full-time coach has been phenomenal because it was not too long ago that this was I'll read off the squad. I actually wrote it down. This was the squad he inherited when he was the caretaker manager for his first game against Cardiff. I'll read you off the squad. So starting goalkeeper was De Gea, Ashley Young, Lindelof, Phil Jones, Luke Shaw were the back four. Nemanja Matic, Paul Pogba, Ander Herrera, and Jesse Lingard were the midfielders, and Anthony Martial, and Marcus Rashford were the strikers. And obviously, some of those names are obviously still there, but to me, what's more impressive is just the transformation he's made to a lot of these deadwood players and a lot of these players that weren't good enough for United, but were still getting consistent minutes under the likes of Mourinho and Van Gaal, where Ashley Young is now replaced by Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Phil Jones is obviously now replaced by Harry Maguire. Lindelof will now be replaced by Rafael Varane. Matic now replaced by, McTominay, Fred, depending on the situation. Lingard replaced by Bruno Fernandes. Anthony Martial coming in and out for Mason Greenwood, Edison Cavani, Jadon Sancho coming in. So it's taken 3 seasons, but Solskjaer has made some really, really good signings that they've worked out. They haven't been flops. So I have to give credit to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer because the transformation, it was a long project, but it seems like finally he actually has a squad that he likes and a squad that is capable for challenging and winning titles now.
Yeah, it really seems like that 3-year plan. It was just we kind of saw a progression of it going. It's just like, all right,
It was
Yash
tough.
mentions it every single. I feel like every single season you hear the same phrase from Yash. Got to clear out the deadwood. Got to clear out all the players that aren't there for
It's actually
full
mad.
effort.
It's actually mad because as long as I've talked about it, you can go back from season 1 especially, and then the first official season of Solskjaer, we had Andreas Pereira always starting in a midfield with like McTominay and Fred. And then, you had likes of Ashley Young, Antonio Valencia as a fullbacks. And then you had Phil Jones, Chris Smalling starting. Oh, to me, it still hasn't clicked about like how much of a transformation that this squad looks like now compared to what it looked like, a couple years back then. It's just kind of mental. It
Mhm.
hasn't really clicked with me yet.
It's on the ascend. It's still ascending, which is scary in itself. But it's definitely a United team that is honestly in the previous season it's just like it's more hopeful than anything. Well, in this season it's like, all right, it's go time. This is a season where they can actually win something. So that's in itself a little scary to see.
I mean,
But it's yeah.
I always bring back like comparisons to Liverpool, but I do that because obviously Tyler's a Liverpool fan. But to me, Liverpool were one of the few teams I saw take that really big transformation since I started watching the Premier League. Because, obviously Chelsea, Man City, they've chopped and changed stuff, but they've, relatively been stayed pretty level in terms of not needing a huge facelift or transformation of what they do. Arsenal obviously have kind of done the opposite where they've were pretty decently stable and then now they've kind of fallen off the cliff. But Liverpool, I remember being a United fan when they brought in Klopp during the last season of Ben Hall, and I was like, you could ask any United fan, they were like, "Oh, this is not good," because it's like we could definitely see like something good is going to happen to this team. It may not happen like right away, but it's going to happen pretty soon, and they're going to win a lot. And the transformations, the signings they made, a lot of Premier League teams were jealous about it because they were like, "Oh, they're making like good signings that are going to improve the team," and then it just got exponentially really good. And they were the first team I saw really take that huge transformation from you know mediocre to like really good. And I think United are kind of slowly taking that progression from kind of being mediocre to finally taking that ascension up to the next level. So I'm really excited. But I will say, as Tyler's mentioned, it's only week 1, so we got to see what they can do for the rest of the season. But oddly enough, moving on to Tyler's team, Liverpool beating Norwich 3-0. Pretty convincing win. Norwich looked a little scary in the beginning, but I felt like overall, I felt like Liverpool had a pretty pretty comfortable outing there. But I think for me, what was interesting was Diego Jota and Roberto Firmino both scoring. Granted, they weren't like world, you know, oh my gosh, like golazos, but they're both got on the score sheet for a Liverpool fan. I know that you mentioned that the striking position has been a big worry for you, but it has to feel good to know that at least the two people that can play center forward for Liverpool both got on the score sheet.
Mhm. It was pretty relieving to see, the 2 goals especially were kind of scrappy, I'm not gonna lie. Like, the
Oh,
first
really?
goal, like, Salah had, like, a mistouch which turned into an assist
Assists?
for him, and then Diogo Jota just kind of slid it to, like, a few feet to the left of Tim Krul. It's cruel,
Mhm.
cool world out there, just letting that go. So, and then, Firmino's goal is just like it originated from Mane getting his shot blocked, and then Salah just also tapping it in for a Firmino tap in as well. So it's just kind of those little scrappy goals that it's not really something you're going to put on a replay or something you're going to watch a montage of, but as a fan trying to see a team win as many games as they can and also try to go for the trophy, it's these kind of goals that you kind of need to see from your team get put in and also have opportunities arise from, because last season these kind of goals were kind of lacking. It was very much like, all right, either we score something spectacular or we just win barely, maybe like 1-0, or with the defense kind of lacking last season too, it'd be like, all right, we got to scrappily win 2-1, 3-2, things like that. So seeing this 3-0 is pretty relieving to me, and seeing Van Dijk back after his ACL tear from last season. Literally, it's been almost a year at this point, and he starts week 1 for
Yeah,
the team. And also seeing Joel Matip back as well as his
yeah.
partner, it was kind of cool to see.
Joe
It's like, all
Gomez
right,
was on the bench, right?
Joe Gomez was on the bench, so
Yeah.
it's kind of
You got your big
interesting to
3.
see.
The
Yeah, we
big
got our
3.
big 3. Fabinho was also on the bench
Mhm.
as well, so it's like, okay, so it's like everyone's kind of back, and it was cool to see. Where there's a lot of big signings for other clubs. For Chelsea, you got like Lukaku, Man U. Once again we got Sancho and Varane. And for Liverpool, the only signing they really had was Konate. But seeing this first week, all these players coming back from injury, it feels like new signings again. It's just like, all right, finally getting all these players back. And we even mentioned Naby Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain starting as well, James Milner also starting. All these players that had some injuries here and there last season, also all coming back. So that's also relieving to see. But, this result, it is against a Norwich team, which I think will probably get relegated. So it's not really, it's a
Hey, I mean,
comforting
yeah,
result to see.
it was last year where, you guys were struggling to beat these teams,
That's
either
true.
barely winning or, would get the surprising L. So I think it's a big step that Liverpool can comfortably win these games again.
It's true. But for me, it's always whenever we see opening weekend, I don't know why it's like written in the Bible or something where it's always Norwich versus Liverpool in opening weekend. 'Cause if you just rewind the previous seasons where Norwich is back in the Premier League, it's always Liverpool versus Norwich in that opening game. And usually Liverpool is just like trouncing them. So, I mean, it's just kind of like that repeat again, like same story, different year, but kind of having these players all come back and then get the result. And Norwich did put up a game. There were certain times when Alisson had to make some big saves. He made like a triple save at one point at the very end of the game.
Hmm.
And there was times where Joel Matip had to put his body on the line just to block a shot. which was a little scary to see because, for me, the best defense are the teams that don't allow other teams to take shots, don't even let the chance happen. But Liverpool, this game they let Norwich take a few chances, but luckily they're all kind of put to bed after the fact. But I think for me, this Liverpool side is looking a little bit more promising than I anticipated before going into the season, because it's like, oh, okay, so all these players look like they're kind of all guns blazing just from the get go. Where I felt like before it may have been a more slower progression getting all these players back in from injury, because after not playing for a few months to in Van Dijk's place for a year even, it could be kind of interesting and kind of rough just getting right back into the groove again
Yeah.
just from the go.
Hmm.
So, it was relieving to see. And, hopefully this kind of switch up with Diogo Jota and Firmino up top, kind of going back to your original question. It is, I think, going to be working out right now, but we'll just have to see consistently if we can just keep going, because that was the worry last season too. Is like, can they keep this going? Because, ultimately they weren't traditional strikers. Neither of them were. They're more
Hmm.
like, wingers for Diogo Jota, or more of like a cam for Firmino. So we'll just have to see how this goes, because right now it's kind of more reliant on Mane and Salah getting those goals again. Then.
Yeah, I know the Sky Sports had a segment. I know Jamie Carragher brought up the same point he brought up last season, was there's too much pressure on like Salah and Mane to score all the goals for Liverpool. So he says like the key for Liverpool being successful is either bringing in a striker or having Firmino and Jota really step up and score and handle kind of the scoring load. Because if you get too reliant on your wingers scoring goals, it'll be easy for teams to kind of lock those wingers down and you know stop those chances from happening. But Liverpool will be interesting, because what was also interesting that came out of this was when I was covering the game, I noticed this was Salah has now. First of all, it's kind of crazy. He's been in the Premier League for 5 seasons now. That's seems like
Mhm.
he hasn't been here for that long, but he has. But he's the first player to score in 5 straight opening weekends. That's a little interesting. That's pretty crazy. I know the a lot of people make like lot a lot of people like to make jokes back in the day that Salah was just a one season wonder type thing, like they did with Kane. But you know that kind of speaks for itself. First player to do that. That's really crazy for Liverpool. But one interesting note that came out of this was Norwich. They had an American. They signed him, Josh Sargent from I believe Werder Bremen. He was
Mhm.
playing in the Bundesliga for a couple seasons. They obviously were not doing too hot, so Josh Sargent made the move to the Premier League, made his debut, coming off the bench for Norwich. I'm excited because he looks the part. Obviously people that follow the U.S. men's national team, we know that he has potential to be pretty good. He's on the U.S. men's national team roster, played in the CONCACAF Nations League. So he looks promising. I'm really excited to see how he kind of gets on. I think Norwich is actually a really good opportunity and club for him, a club that plays, attacking football. He'll get a ton of chances to score. He'll get to learn off Timo Pukki. Hopefully, get some of that Pukki party magic. So, I'm excited to see how Josh Sargent goes. It's good because now he's the fourth American right now playing in the Premier League, right behind Christian Pulisic, Zach Steffen, and one player for Wolves, Owen Otuwasi, I think, or I think that's how you say his name. But it's good to see another American thriving and getting a chance to kind of go out in the Premier League. So one little note over there. But moving on to kind of save this one a little bit down the list, but the biggest game of the weekend, or quote unquote biggest game, was the Tottenham City game, where Tottenham actually surprisingly came out victorious. 1-0 game for them, winning it 1-0. It was a classic Sun strike that won the goal, cuts in, finesse. Did the iconic celebration right there for his goal. But I didn't get a chance to watch this game entirely, but from everything I heard and everything I read after the fact, it just seemed like Nuno set his squad up right. And if you didn't know, Nuno, when he was at Wolves, he was a kind of a thorn in Man City's side. I always felt like Wolves put up like probably one of the best fights against City with Adama Traore, Raul Jimenez, their fast wingers. It always seemed like they had the right game plan to attack City, and it just seemed like Nuno copy and pasted his style at Wolves and just pasted it to Tottenham side, and they came out victorious. Had Son and I think Bergwijn playing as strikers, Hoiberg playing as like that holding midfielder. So Nuno got the tactics right and got the dub to start off his Premier League campaign with Tottenham.
Mhm. It was also kind of interesting that although he usually is a thorn in that Man City side, Willy Bolly every once in a while do some cheese in the result. He played a different kind of tactic from what we usually see from Nuno Espirito Santos kind of playbook, where you always see that classic three in the back. Whenever you think of the Wolves side, you always think it's like, oh yes, they have like Connor Cody, Willy Bolly, and then Saiz, and that's their classic three in the back.
Hmm.
And then they had like the right wing back and left wing back kind of always running up and down the line. But I thought he was going to bring that to Tottenham. And funny enough, this game, he put four in the back. And I was like, huh, what?
Tanganga.
Yeah, Tanganga playing right back. And then, Reguilon playing left back. And then in the middle, it's just, Eric Dyer. He's back in center back. I was just like, what's going on? I'm like, this is kind of weird to see.
Yeah,
And then,
Davinson
Davison
Sanchez.
Sanchez as well as his partner. And I was just like, what is going on? Like,
Probably the two
is
mistake-prone center backs of the past couple seasons starting.
but they just looked like they were shot out of a cannon because this Spurs side looked like they're just cracked like the whole game. Like they had so much more energy and juice compared to the Man City side. And they got to put it to perspective. It just seems like everyone's just on times two speed. Like anytime Lucas Moura had the ball, he just ran past the entire Man City defense.
Yeah.
Like Man City just did not look like they were in this game for the most part. Like, they had the better players on paper, but when everything was just kind of getting put together, Spurs counterattack was just insane. Like it's just Man City were just on their back foot for most of it. So even the scoreline of 1-0 doesn't even play the full picture. Lloris did have some good save, but there were times when even Stig Bergwijn was on a one-on-one against Ederson, and then his finishing kind of let him down. But Heung-min Son with the opening goal in the second half, it was some big relief because all the Spurs fans, you could hear in the stands all of them chanting, "Are you watching Harry Kane?" Like
Yeah,
all those chants,
crazy. Crazy, right?
and I don't think Harry was there. Like usually
Yeah,
there's a camera that shows if someone is in the stadium, whether if they're injured or just out for
yeah, I
personal
don't think he
reasons.
was.
He was not there unless the cameramen couldn't find them.
Yeah,
But he was not the game. So it's kind of the writing on the wall that Harry Kane probably will be on his way out, most likely to the team that Tottenham were facing that game.
yeah.
And they very do well need someone like him because Ferran Torres playing striker is not the same as Cesc Fabregas playing striker as a midfielder. So I don't know, it's just kind of bizarre seeing Gabriel Jesus still on the bench.
Yeah.
their one striker could even get above Ferran Torres to get the starting striker's position. And also seeing Jack Grealish getting the
Yeah.
start over, Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, Kevin did get an injury over the Euros, and maybe he's still recovering from that a little bit. But I was surprising to see Grealish get such a quick start because I thought, Pep
Yeah.
would think to kind of instigate him and kind of teach him the, all the tactics and get him more
Yeah.
comfortable with it before sending him into such a big game. But,
Yeah.
sure enough, he just chucks him in right away. And, he did have some good plays, but it just seemed like the chemistry wasn't there with that
Mhm.
left side of Raheem Sterling yet. And it kind of showed. So maybe that kind of little blips also kind of deterred Man City from getting too much attacking premise or like too much attacking going on in that game. So, I mean, Tottenham looked really good against that game, and Man City, they dropped the ball. Like
Yeah.
this, we talk a lot about how making one mistake, losing one game, getting that one draw can be very costly at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Man City starting off with a loss when all the other teams also in that top
Yeah. All the teams
four,
challenging for title, basically.
yeah, they all got the results. So this puts a little bit of pressure on City,
Mhm.
like just straight from the
But
get
City
go.
City did start very slow last season. We were like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what's going on with this team?" And then
That's
you know what
true.
happened? They just went on a run. But I think this is I wouldn't say like so worrying for City, but it's definitely going to be interesting because they did bring in Jack Grealish, and when you spend 100 mil on a player, like you have to play him. There, you can't just like have him on the bench or have him playing, the every random cup game that Pep likes to do for some of his big signings. But splashing 100 mil, there's definitely going to be a lot of pressure for Jack Grealish to kind of live up to. And I feel bad for kind of Phil Foden as well because it seems like Phil Foden. I don't know. For me, I feel like Phil Foden and Jack Grealish are similar S players where they can kind of do the same role where they can play like Jack Grealish can play out in the wing on the left wing if he needs to. Phil Foden can do the same. Both ideally like to play in the middle and as a number 10. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how Jack Grealish kind of gets on. But I guess going back to your point about Tottenham, it was definitely crazy when I heard the chants of "Are you watching Harry Kane?" Because I think the whole Harry Kane saga has kind of gotten really crazy. Because the more I read about it, I just feel like Harry Kane has just been in the. I feel like Harry Kane has done more damage for his reputation than he thought he was doing. Because yeah, it's okay to ask for a transfer request or just, say that you want a new challenge, you want to move on. Of course, any player is going to want to do that. We've seen top players do that all the time from, Cristiano Ronaldo, Eden Hazard, Thibaut Courtois, like players all over the world have done that. But I think the way Harry Kane has gone about it has been wrong. First of all, I think him not turning up to training is pretty bad because, you're a professional player, you signed a contract. I do agree with Gary Neville and other pundits where you kind of have a right and respect to hold to your teammates and the coaches to show up to training. You can't just not show up and be like, "Oh, I'm bigger than the club. I'm bigger than the manager." I think that's big sign of disrespect. And I also think him going on interview and actually putting a price tag on his head saying that he's worth like 100 mil or so. I think that's also really bad because you cannot do that. That's completely undermining the club, Tottenham. And I feel Harry Kane for so many years has kind of been the good guy of football. Like he's been like the guy that just, comes in every day, does the work, doesn't complain, doesn't say anything. He's like the poster boy, but this is not how you go about it. And I feel like a lot of his reputation has kind of been hurt and he's kind of essentially turned himself into the villain because you can't sit there and put a price tag on your head and you also cannot not turn up for training. Um, so I think he's done his reputation a lot of harm. And I don't know, if Jack Grealish went for 100 mil, Harry Kane is easily like way better than Jack Grealish. So he's going to have to go up for 150 mil at least. And obviously, Man City are the only team that could afford him. And for Tottenham, it would make no sense for Daniel Levy to sell him because it's not like they can bring in a player of Harry Kane's quality to come in at Tottenham, especially at this stage of their club where they're not competing for Champions League qualification or Champions League titles. So 150 mil I think is going to be what's going to get Harry Kane to get out of Tottenham. But to me, I just feel like I feel like Harry Kane has just went about this whole situation very wrong, and to me, it's kind of hurt his reputation in terms of being the good guy in football.
Hmm. And at this point, it's just, does he even stay at the club? Because, after saying all this
He
stuff,
signed the thing I don't get is like, why sign the long-term deal if you knew in the back of your head that like this team may not be the team that's going to challenge for the title, you put yourself in that situation, I feel like.
I know. And I mean, I've seen at times, back in the past, you've seen like with Coutinho at Liverpool, you've seen Luis Suarez at Liverpool, where whenever they sign that long term deal, they usually leave the next transfer window because, the club can get more money from that player because of that contract.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what Harry Kane was going for. But it was such a
Apparently he had a gentleman's agreement with Daniel Levy, but I feel like Daniel Levy's the last guy I want to have a gentleman's agreement with.
like the man crosses his fingers behind the back while he shakes the hand. So, yeah. So, I mean, at this point too, is if they sell Harry Kane, like Tottenham sells Harry Kane for 150 million pounds, Tottenham have 150 million pounds to
Yeah.
spend, but they have a week to do it.
Yeah.
So they're
And
gonna
then
pull
you
like a
run the
panic
risk of
buy.
yeah. Then you run the risk of buying like the bail money players where they're just all crap, essentially.
Yeah, and it's just you get one gold nugget out of a sea of coal.
Hmm.
But I mean, right now, a lot of people are saying, even if they bench Kane, don't play Kane, sell Kane, some Tottenham fans are kind of relieved. It's like, we can do it without him. We can play Son. Like he can carry. But I'm thinking, no. We've seen in previous seasons, whenever Son does have to carry, yeah, he can usually go off. And we saw in this game as well, he's literally taking all the set pieces. He's taking the corner, he's taking the free
Yeah,
kicks,
doing
he's scoring the
everything.
goals. He's getting this, yeah, he's literally doing everything. But that's so much pressure for one player. And
Yeah.
eventually teams will figure out, it's like, all right, if we can find a way to shut down Heung-min Son, then, Tottenham shut down. Whereas
Yeah.
before, if you had Kane and Son, Son won't produce as much, but that's because Kane's also producing something too. And
Hmm.
if you go back to last season, Kane and Son, that combo was insane.
Yeah, it was deadly.
It was deadly. They scored the most goals and assists as
Hmm.
a duo in the whole Premier League.
Yeah.
So I still think losing Kane for 150 million pounds. I mean, if he's gonna go, then rip off the band-aid and try to sell him now. Just get the money because he's just gonna depreciate over time at this rate. Because
Yeah, he's not going to get younger. And,
yeah,
if he sits and rots on the bench for like half the season, no club is going to be like, well, he's not really worth 150 million anymore. He doesn't play.
exactly. And with that kind of attitude too, is like, do players and or do managers and other clubs want to deal with that?
Yeah.
So I mean, that all kind of goes into play. It's just like, all right, kind of forcing the hand of Tottenham to sell, but will Daniel Levy do it?
See, for
He
me,
has like 11 days to do it as of today.
I honestly feel like it's gonna come down to transfer deadline day or that last week of the transfer window. And I feel like Man City, they're kind of playing hardball, seeing if Tottenham will bite for like 110 or 115. But I feel like eventually it's just gonna come down to it. City will have to fork up the full 150 mil. Tottenham accept it. Harry Kane goes, but I feel like that's only going to happen either on transfer deadline day or the last week of the transfer window because knowing Daniel Levy, he's going to play hardball to try to get as much money as he can, if a player wants to leave.
That's unreal if they do 150 million pound transfer
Yeah.
on transfer deadline day. That's like Kepa
That's yeah.
level
That's
transfer.
really
Jeez.
crazy how much money that's going to be when you think about it.
Mm,
But I don't know. I do feel bad because if that does happen, I do feel bad for Nuno because then it's like Nuno comes in, does nothing wrong, and loses, the best striker, you know, top five striker in Europe, to like nothing he did, and now he has all this money that he can't spend because the club waited too long to sell him. So
mhm.
he's kind of left like thinking like, what do I do?
I mean, I will say, coming in does bring that kind of new manager boost, as I saw in that first game where, Lucas Moura, like the pace was back. Bergwijn looked like he
The
was
pace is
showing the
bad.
pace is back. And then Bergwijn showing glimpses of why Tottenham
You-
bought him in the first place.
yeah,
And, Dele Alli's back, and the
yeah,
dreadlocks. There you go.
yeah,
So I was like, all right. So maybe there's some promise there. Like dreadlock Dele Alli coming back from the grave. And that's almost like a new signing right there. So maybe that kind of those little things could help with the team. But I still feel like even with Kane there or not, they need at least another player. Because if any one of those four go down now,
yeah.
their depth chart
It's
is
just either
pretty
yeah, it's thin. They either got like youth
pretty thin.
academy, just youth products at that point. You don't have too much. You don't have too
Got
much to go
Oliver
on.
Skip right there.
Yeah, Carlos Gil or, the person
Oh
they
my
got from
gosh.
Sevilla. But yeah, what's also interesting with Tottenham is even though they had this amazing results against City, that today they actually lost the first leg of their playoff tie in the new UEFA Europa Conference League against Paco de Ferreira, a team in the Portuguese first division. They lost 1-0 in Portugal today, so kind of a terrible result for Tottenham. After that's I will say Tottenham did play like their B or C team, a lot of youth products out there, but come on, you got to take care of business. And to be honest, this could be like the UEFA Europa Conference League. I know it's not the most attractive thing to play in because it's like if you win it, you just get qualification automatically to the Europa League. But this could be a really good chance for Tottenham to solidify and get themselves a trophy because the competition, I feel like, is arguably, I would say, like, not to be bad on other teams, it's arguably like in Tottenham's level of like realm of talent and everything. So I feel like Tottenham could, if they play their cards right, they get serious about it. I feel like they have a better shot of winning this than the Europa League.
I agree too. It's just like it's this almost a gimme trophy at this point with
Hmm.
Tottenham in there. It's like they're kind of way overqualified.
But
I
they
mean, they're
fumbled the first leg already, so they got a mountain to climb in the second leg
they
to
kind
see
of
what
showed their
happens.
intentions with that B team that they put out. I don't even know if you call it B team. It was almost C team at that rate. I
Yeah,
was just like, what is this? Who are these players?
yeah, there's so many random players on there. But yeah, Tottenham, I feel like are going to be like this yo-yo where they're just going to be looking good a couple weeks and then looking like really lost the next couple weeks. So we'll see what happens with them. And then moving on to another London club. Actually, the last couple teams we have are London clubs, but Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Chelsea demolishing Palace at home, 3-0. What was interesting here was Pulisic. He got a goal. Marcus Alonso scored a free kick, but Chelsea academy graduate Trevor Chalobah scored a stunning opening goal, debut goal for debut Premier League goal for Chelsea, and basically went down in tears after scoring it. It was really cool because if you remember, his older brother, I believe Nathan Chalobah, Nathan is his first name, was actually part of the title winning squad in 2016-17 under Conte. Obviously didn't amount to become like a very successful Chelsea player, but very, very cool to see that kind of, you see the little brother already playing out in the Premier League now. So really cool for Chelsea. But what's also interesting was when the last time we recorded this podcast, Romelu Lukaku had not been announced officially. Obviously, before this game, Lukaku had already been officially announced. So Chelsea now have, I would say, guaranteed 25 goals a season striker with Romelu Lukaku coming back to the club that he came up in the Premier League. So as a United fan, it hurts a little bit because it's like, dang, this guy could have been really good at United, but just didn't pan out. Not just I would say just not at the right time. He didn't come to the club at the right time. So unfortunate. I like Lukaku overall as a person. I think he's a really good guy. So I'm rooting for him, but hopefully he doesn't score too many goals against United. But man, Chelsea got a good one to come back.
They
25.
got a
I'm
good one.
guarantee you like that's 25 goals guaranteed. Is crazy.
I will say there's a lot of omens against him, though. There's a lot of omens. He's wearing the number 9 for Chelsea, which
Yes.
historically hasn't been too great. And
Gonzalo
also
Higuain, Alvaro Morata have been on that jersey. So
Fernando Torres
yeah.
before the Champions League semifinal game. Like, he didn't really score that many, but and then, the list goes on. But I mean, even for him, when he previously was at Chelsea, when he had the dreadlocks once again, he didn't score a goal. He
Yeah.
played 15 games, didn't score a goal. So, there's a lot for him to overcome, just mentally and also just in voodoo wise. But I think for this team, they're too stacked to like not do well. That whole starting 4, 3, or 5, how many players are going to put up top? There's so many players and so much competition that they have to reform. Otherwise, they're on the bench. Like Kai Havertz was on the bench for this opening game, and so was I believe Mason Mount. Like literally, they have not only those players, but they also have Timo Werner still there, Christian Pulisic still there, and then I'm just reading the last one. But
Ziyech.
yeah,
Ziyech.
Ziyech who got injured.
Mhm.
So all these players are still up there. And I'm
Yeah,
just like they
and
haven't sold
not to
anyone. How's
mention
this?
they did sell Tammy Abraham to Roma, to Jose
Mhm.
Mourinho's, like, Roma, but they sold them for an insane fee, like 45 mil.
Yeah, he didn't
I'm
even
like,
play that much
I
last
feel like
season.
Chelsea's, like, the only team that gets, like, a ridiculous amount of money off their, like, bench players. I just don't get it how they do
Unless you're Liverpool Academy product, then
it.
you can also kind of get the same with Solanke, I Brewster. But for Chelsea,
Yeah.
though, yeah, literally. But I will say Tammy Abraham could go off because Chelsea also do have the tendency of
They
selling.
set up a buyback clause for him. I think it's like 70 mil, so they can
I think,
avoid
yeah.
if he does go off where they don't pay 100 mil to get Lukaku from Inter Milan type thing. But no, Chelsea looked ridiculous, especially that if you look at their squad from top to bottom, their defense has obviously been really solid. I'm actually pretty impressed with Trevor Chalobah. They've been talks about getting Kunde from Sevilla, but I'm like, this guy looks pretty good already. So we don't know how, if they'll go after him, but the midfield is obviously solid with Conte, Jorginho, who's like literally won the entire European collection of trophies. I feel like at this point,
Mhm.
you have Kovacic that can play in there. Mason Mount that can play in there sometimes. And in the front, three, you have Lukaku, Werner, Ziyech, Kai Havertz, Christian Pulisic. The list kind of goes on and on about the quality of players they have. It's kind of insane their depth chart right now. And Tuchel, I
It's
would say probably the hottest coach in Europe right now, and just the amount of trophies he's winning right now, it's crazy.
and just randomly won the Champions League last season,
Yeah,
and they also won the Super Cup against
yeah.
Villarreal. So they're literally. I don't know if it's just like not too much hype right now, but it's just Chelsea secretly just winning, not secretly, but just kind of more low key, just winning all these trophies, and like they're not really getting enough credit.
Well,
And it's
I feel like Tuchel is kind of a low key manager too, because I feel like the managers that have won stuff for them in the past have been very let me say what's the nicest way, out there managers like Jose Mourinho. He's always going to cause up a story. Antonio Conte is always doing some wild stuff on the sidelines. Tuchel is probably like the most chill minded coach out of all of them, where he's pretty intense in training, but like he's not going to show it out in public and such.
unless it was the Dortmund version. there's I remember there's one time he made like some weird like X kind of symbol with
hmm
trying to say some kind of tactic. I was like, what is he doing? He's dancing on the sideline. But yeah, I would say under Tuchel, it's a lot more mellow on the sideline.
Yeah, there's not as much drama going out in the media and such
Hmm. It's kind of
compared
like
to the other two.
it's kind of more calm figure.
Yeah.
Kind of bizarre to see on the Chelsea sideline, but it is what it is. It's
Mhm.
Chelsea just dominating that Patrick Vieira Crystal Palace, and
Yes.
that's also kind of be as expected as well. So we're just gonna have to see how they do against Arsenal upcoming soon as well. So
Yeah. But, actually talking about Arsenal, the Brentford Arsenal game, Arsenal, not having a good opening day, losing 2-0 to the newly promoted side Brentford. Um, Probably the biggest thing is that Arsenal fans in general have just been kind of feeling very meh about the signings because they are expected to announce the signings of Aaron Ramsdale, the goalkeeper, and Martin Odegaard from Real Madrid, bringing them back on permanent deals. But I was looking at the transfer, I guess, budget in the terms of the money they spent. They've actually spent with they when they confirm Odegaard and Ramsdale, they would have actually spent more money than Manchester United have for Rafael Varane and Jadon Sancho. Um, it's kind of crazy when you think about it that they spent more money on their players than Manchester United have on two basically superstars. But it's kind of the state Arsenal are in right now, where they don't necessarily have that brand power where they can just buy the biggest names because they're not in Champions League anymore. So they kind of have to make these deals or kind of overpay for some players because they just kind of don't have that, I guess, that power over other certain clubs anymore because of the way the club has kind of been run the past couple seasons. But I will say for Arsenal fans that their couple signings they have made this summer are all pretty young. Ben White, I think, is like 22. Martin Odegaard's like 23. Aaron Ramsdale's pretty young. Lokonga's pretty young. Nuno Tavares is also pretty young. So I guess that is a good thing. They're kind of going that Man United route where they sign good players, but they are really young, so they can kind of build for the future. But oh man, it's tough because Mikel Arteta, I think the biggest question mark under him is will he last as Arsenal manager because it's not looking too hot. I just don't see a very clear, distinct style that he's trying to play. I feel like I don't know. I just feel like this is now I think this third full year going into Arteta or the second full year, and I just still feel like there's just question marks on how he wants to set up the side, how he wants his players to perform, the quality of players he's given. I don't know. I just feel like there's still a lot of question marks on the Arteta, and I don't know right now if he will be able to last the whole season.
hmm I, I have to say, for this Arsenal side, they didn't have their best starting 11 as well. They started like Balogun at striker, like his
Yeah,
debut at striker,
that's
because
true.
Lacazette.
Aubameyang and Lacazette had COVID, so they had to miss out on the action.
So they're both out. Bukayo Saka was also on the bench, and then also for just the rest of the starting 11, it was all youth players almost. Like you got Lokonga also getting his debut. Emil Smith Rowe is a little bit more of a veteran youth player, if that makes sense,
Yeah,
getting the start, and then also got Martinelli also
Martinelli
getting
coming
the
back
start
from
as
the
well.
Olympics, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, so
Already
it's kind of like
starting.
pagery. It's just like,
Yeah,
you know what, you're coming straight in. It's not like he played too much anyway. So there we go. And I think all those kind of showed that, I mean, if you just put it on paper, they're all kind of, youth players. And they're facing a Brentford side that got promoted, a team that was used to winning last season. And they kind of came in guns blazing with a full capacity side. It was a small stadium too. Like
but
the
it sounded
Brentford played at
loud.
home, but it sounded like 60,000. It was insane. Maybe the mics were just really close to the fans or something, but that definitely played a part in helping Brentford take over because it just made Arsenal look mediocre. And it really made them look like they're a side that played almost half youth players. And, because they did. But this Brentford side, they were pretty commanding for the most part. And some of the goals that Arsenal let in were kind of sloppy as well.
Yeah,
And I was like, what is going on? They couldn't even score. Arsenal couldn't even get a big chance in. Balogun, he had some chances, but it just looked like it was his first game in the Premier League. I'm not gonna lie. So it's kind of bizarre seeing Arsenal still almost feeling like they're rebuilding because they kind of started this rebuild process the same time as Manchester United started their process of kind of clearing out the deadwood and rebuilding as well. Whereas you can see United now bringing in world class players, bringing in all those players of high pedigree because now they're in Champions League. They're excuse me, they're like they
Yeah,
have that
Arsenal's so
pedigree
bad
now.
they're getting Tyler choked up now.
Yeah, they're getting me choked up. But Arsenal's getting worse. Like they're not even
Yeah.
getting fourth place consistently every single season now. They're barely
It's
making it into Europa League.
actually mad because I just feel like Arsenal fans, they're upset with the club. But I feel like there's just a general sense with Arsenal fans. Yeah, we joke about them. They're a meme club where, oh, like, classic Arsenal. But Arsenal fans, I feel like, are not even optimistic anymore. It's like they're just like they just expect the worst. They have there's no optimism. They're like optimism has not been restored to the club. And to me, that's just worrying because now I feel like this has been, 4 or 5 seasons now where they haven't had Champions League football. Like this is Arsenal. This is one of the biggest, teams in the Premier League, and they're approaching, their fifth or fourth season without Champions League football. I think that's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it.
Hmm. And I mean, to kind of put it in perspective as well, like our good friend Sung Cho, the armchair manager
Analysis.
who was had his classic analysis from a few seasons ago on this
Yeah,
very podcast. He sent me a sent me a DM over the weekend where Arsenal they put out a Instagram reel of Thierry Henry, like when Henry was on the team, Patrick Vieira was on the team, the
yeah,
Invincibles. They were a much different team. They were basically competing for Champions League all consistently. They were winning titles, but he's basically telling me, he's like, man, this Henri man needs to be tried for fraud, as millions of kids grew up becoming Arsenal supporters because of his deceptions, and only just to bring sadness now for the past several seasons. And I'm just like, that kind of sets the tone now, where it's just like Arsenal fans, they're not even sad anymore. They just know it's just only disappointment. It's almost like Tottenham level sad, where both North London teams are just kind of, you don't know where direction they're going. Like they had a map, but they didn't have a goal for where to end up. It's just
yeah.
like, it is what it is. So this Arsenal side, I don't know what to make of them. I had a little bit of hope
Me too. Me too.
going into this, but honestly, we will have to see what happens when Aubameyang comes back, Lacazette comes back, Bukayo Saka gets slotted back into that starting 11, because those are some key integral players. It's like, yeah, of course, the team's going to be worse when their
Yeah,
star players are out, but
yeah.
to
Ben
lose to
White.
Brentford,
Yeah, Ben White looked pretty nervous.
hmm
But I can't blame him because look at the people that are playing in front of him. You have like Granit Xhaka, as you're like holding that guy's like the most wild man like known to the Premier League, and I think he re-signed a long-term contract with Arsenal. I just
hmm
don't get it because I don't know. Some of the moves Arsenal make are pretty puzzling because you have some of these players that are like deadwood in a sense where you just know they're just not good enough for quote unquote like the stereotypical Arsenal level. But Arsenal keep re-signing them or they keep bringing these players in instead of moving on and just starting fresh for a new squad or a new type of player. But they keep trying to hold on to like hopefully this guy can turn out to be what we want him to be, and it's just not. And I think what Cho said was interesting. I feel like a lot of people I know that are Arsenal fans, they grew up becoming Arsenal fans because of Thierry Henry, the Invincibles, Arsene Wenger, Patrick Vieira, like all those Dennis Bergkamp, all those legendary players. But as time goes on, the players that are currently in their prime right now, I feel like they grew up watching, Thierry Henry, all those guys playing. But the young crop that are 17, 16-year old, their recollection of Arsenal was just going to be disappointment of them getting blown out by Manchester United, them losing in the final, them just getting fourth place, them not making the Champions League. And I feel like the longer this goes without them going back to their successful roots, it's going to hurt the club eventually because it's going to be harder for players to relate to the success they had because it had been so long. So um, I feel like this season is really, really important for Arsenal. Whether Arteta's the guy to get them back there, we don't know. But I feel like their signings are a good step towards kind of, in a sense, turning the tide to hopefully better days at Arsenal because they are young, they have a lot of promising potential and such. But you know, unfortunately for Arsenal, they really need that potential to come up now and not 4 or 5 years down the line. And it's kind of a difficult situation right now with Arsenal.
hmm like, and it kind of goes to show where, yes, you kind of mentioned it yourself, where they don't have, the glitz and glamour of the Champions League to attract players. They have to overpay to get just project players that they can hopefully develop to become world class, to hopefully get back into that. So it's kind of a rough time being an Arsenal fan. If you're out there, we kind of feel
It
for you, but.
it also it's
Man.
hard too. I guess one last so mini rant there is it also hurts too because the big players they splash money on, you know, Nicola Pepe has shown flashes of okay, this guy can be pretty good, but he just doesn't do it consistently enough. Thomas Partey from last summer keeps getting injured, so we don't know how he will look when he does play. He looks phenomenal, but it's just he's injured all the time. Aubameyang kind of dipping down in terms of can he come back to the form he had 2 years ago. Lacazette, you know, been decent, but never really panned out to be that striker that we thought he was going to be when they signed him a couple of seasons back. So, you know, they kind of have, you know, they when they do splash the money, unfortunately, it just has not been super successful. And I think that ultimately makes or breaks a club is like whether the superstar signings you make actually pan out to be good.
Mhm.
So it's been a harrowing and tough time for Arsenal, and you know, kind of dealt with that rant over there. But yeah, I hope the best for Arsenal because you know the Premier League is a better league if they are back, you know, towards the top and challenging for titles. But just not right now, at least. But um, moving on to the preview section, we have a couple decent games that are going to be coming on this upcoming weekend. First, we got Wolves versus Tottenham. In the outside, this doesn't look too interesting, but if you actually look at the storylines, Nuno returning back to the Molyneux, returning back to the team he coached for the past 3 seasons, basically elevated Wolves to the next level. So a lot of those players are going to know Nuno. Nuno is going to have relationship with a lot of those players. So this one will be interesting. I think, you know, Wolves are a good side, but I think I feel like Nuno will want to kind of get a better of his old clubs. I feel like Tottenham might pick up another win. So I think they bounce back from their defeat from the Europa Conference League today. I feel like they might win 2-1 this weekend against Wolves.
Mhm. I agree with you, Yosh. Like, I think it's gonna be a Tottenham win, mostly because I feel like Tottenham are also a lot better situation to also recover and not really recover, but also just kind of
A revenge
transition into
game.
this yeah, revenge game. But yeah, transition into like this new kind of style of Nuno. Whereas for Wolves, they're very much before they're built around that Nuno system of three in the back, and having this new manager come in, it's gonna be a lot kind of different kind of styles, kind of learning that. So, they didn't really Wolves in the first game week against Leicester, they lost 1-0. And against Tottenham, I think it might be another kind of scrappy game for them, trying to still kind of adapt to this new transition system. So I think it'll be another 1-0 for Tottenham.
Yeah, so we're both getting Tottenham wins there, and then we got West Ham versus Leicester City. Two of I would say um, teams that really performed really well last season. I thought was what was interesting was Leicester City in their last game when they did play Wolves. When Jamie Vardy scored, he actually went up to the Wolves supporter section and howled at them. So classic Jamie Vardy coming back. You'd love to see that, but this won't be interesting because West Ham have been pushing to get Jesse Lingard to come back to West Ham. It still hasn't happened yet, but um, very, very interesting clash. I feel like it's going to be exciting. I really like West Ham because they have Mikel Antonio, Barrama. They have, you know, Declan Rice. They just have a good squad, and so do Leicester. But I think with West Ham being at home, the home factor kind of has to kick in again because of the fans. So I feel like, you know, the fans will be blowing bubbles. The London Stadium, I feel like a 2-1. I feel like another 2-1 West Ham. I feel like a 2-1 victory for West Ham is going to be in the books for them this weekend.
Ooh. This is a little interesting because both teams are they considered dark horses at this point? Like everyone kind of expects them to be knocking at the door of the Champions League
I would
at
say
this
so,
point.
yeah. Or
So I
making
mean,
a
you never
run for
know.
Europa League, definitely for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely Europa League challenge for these two teams. So they're very much on the same level, and West Ham they faced a Newcastle side, and they scored surprisingly a lot of goals in this
They
game.
came back. I think they came back from 2-0 down to win 4-2.
They
Crazy.
did come back and they won 4-2, and I was like, oh, did it about Messi Lingard? Oh, interesting. But I mean, that is against a Newcastle side, which is of course Newcastle. So this Leicester side is gonna be a lot different. I think, given that these two are gonna be kind of fighting like head on for the same kind of positions, ultimately at the end of the season, it's gonna be one of those make or break kind of games. And usually, whenever I see things like that, it's always a draw. So I'm gonna go with a 2-2, 2-2.
Ooh, that'll be exciting too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay. I
It'll be a
see it.
good
And then
game though.
yeah, good game. And finally the last game of the weekend that we had, the big one, Arsenal versus Chelsea, that historic rivalry. Interesting enough, right here is Arsenal have won the last three meetings between these two sides, which kind of interesting because it's like Chelsea have been very good recently, and Arsenal have not been the best, but they've still managed to pick up the dub when they can. Um, we'll probably see Romelu Lukaku get his first start for Chelsea, or definitely come off the bench, or at least featuring in this game. But Arsenal could feature Martin Odegaard in this game as well, which will be a huge boost for them. Aubameyang has been reported that he tested negative for COVID this week, so he could return for this game. So that'll be a big boost for them. But I actually think, you're going to call me crazy as much as I went off on Arsenal just a couple minutes ago. I think with them playing at the Emirates Stadium, they're going to have it. They're going to be back at the Emirates Stadium. I feel like with that, compounded with losing their first game of the season and against their rivals Chelsea, I feel like they're going to come up with a little little bit of something, something. Arteta's going to get them fired up. He seems to have Chelsea's number recently, so I'm going to go with a. It's hard because Chelsea don't concede a lot of goals, but I feel like it. Oh, this one's tough. I feel like it's going to be. I can either see this going one way. It goes 1-0 or 3-2. So I know Chelsea don't concede a lot of goals, so I'm going to go with the safe one. You know what? I'll go 3-2. Why not? Let's just go 3-2.
3-2 to Arsenal?
Yeah.
Oh,
Arsenal
interesting.
Arsenal going to concede some stupid goals because it's Arsenal. They have like some very very confusing players, but I don't know. I feel like they just seem to have Chelsea's number recently, and I feel like that kind of voodoo stuff can kind of come along. And them being at the Emirates, I don't know. I feel like the crowd is going to be into it. Arteta is going to want a response from his team, so I'm going to go 3-2 Arsenal. Call me
Hmm.
crazy. It might not happen, but I'm just gonna say 3-2 Arsenal.
I usually do factor in a lot of factors like that, like crowds, home field advantage, which is pretty important, and also just recent form, and also some of that voodoo stuff because like sometimes that does play in the mental part of players' heads. But man, Chelsea, I feel like this season and last season, just the fact that they've been getting the games done, like under Tuchel, they've just been getting things done. There's very few times where they kind of drop the ball. I feel like against in just terms of momentum too, going into this game, they just beat Crystal Palace, they just beat Villarreal in the Super Cup. I don't see them losing. It's I don't even see them conceding. And I feel like this Arsenal side, they're they're just too much of a mess right now. It's just like even if Aubameyang comes in, he was just sick of COVID. So it's just like I don't know. It's gonna be like Cam Newton when he just came back from COVID. It's just like I don't know. He's gonna be like kind of nerfed. So I mean, also like Arsenal fans, they're kind of the most raucous as well, but they also are some of the most easily to succumb to depression if poop hits the fan. So I think Chelsea could get a 1-0 lead from this, and then it starts going downhill real quick, and then it just ends 2-0. So I'm gonna go Chelsea 2-0.
Okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
I just kind of put my result out there. I just like one of those things you just have a feeling for, so that's why I put it out there. It most likely will not happen logically. Like Chelsea are just a way better team, but you got to throw out some crazy results out there. It's week 2. You got to
Yeah.
throw it out there. You can't be scared. But I do see
Well,
your logic, Tyler, because I feel like that's probably what's going to happen. But I'm like, you got to have fun with it. And I feel like a 3-2 could happen for Arsenal. I
it
feel like
is
they could win
football. Like
this.
literally anything could happen. It could be a
Yeah,
6-1.
yeah,
Like literally.
Any-
So you never know. We're just
yeah,
throwing things at the wall and maybe one sticks. We
yeah.
could be
You
both
never
wrong.
know.
It could be tie. It could be a
Yeah.
0-0. Hopefully
Oh,
not, but
please no, no, no. I guarantee you
please.
this whole week after like what the opening weekend we have, like all games are just 0-0. Everything ends in a draw.
There has to be
Uh,
balance. So there you go.
perfectly balanced as things should be. But yeah, that kind of wraps up episode 121 for us. As we always say, thank you so much for the support. You could follow us at the Premier Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel if you'd like to catch the video versions of the podcast. And if you'd like to leave a review on Apple Podcasts for the Premier Pod, that would be great. It helps us get notice out there. But obviously, just listening to it is more than enough. And if you like it and want to share with a friend or someone else that's interested in Premier League or just football and soccer in general, that's obviously more than welcome. And we do appreciate the support in any way we get it. So thank you guys once again for listening. That wraps up episode 121 for us. Thank you guys. Peace.
Peace.